you get to see people in a lot of different states of emotion, and you get to see how they handle them. Consumers, professionals alike, they get kind of narrow-minded and they fail to look at the whole big picture of the business that we're in.
Ooh wee, man! You starting off with some gas, Jeff. My name is Kevin McIntosh, and this is the Closing Table, where we talk to experts about their experience in real estate all across the country. Let's go. Welcome back to the Closing Table. I am your host, Kevin C. McIntosh. And joining us on this episode, ready to share some knowledge with us, we want to welcome Jeffrey Varga. How are you, Jeff?
I'm doing well. How you doing, Kevin?
Man, I'm doing good, Jeff, man. Thank you so much for asking. And thank you for accepting our invitation to be a guest on the Closing Table, sir. We appreciate that.
I appreciate you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I know you're eager to get it all out. Tell us what's going on real estate-wise in your market. But first, we want to know who you are, Jeff. So tell us in 60 seconds or less, who are you outside of real estate?
I'm a father. We had our first child 7 months ago. I'm a
Congratulations.
husband. Thank you very much. It's been a tremendous blessing.
Yeah.
So I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a son. I'm a friend to all, but most importantly, given the topic of this podcast, I am my local source for all things real estate.
Love the way you put that right there. Love the way you put that. Okay, good. So let's talk about real estate then. Your real estate business. I want you to kind of describe it for me and for our audience, if you don't mind. If you can, hit on a few key points. How long you've been licensed, your niche or specialty, and any notable achievements.
Okay, so I was fortunate. About 7.5 years ago, I ran into a extremely high-end producer of primarily luxury real estate, and she offered to mentor me, and I was very hesitant at the time. After college, I played professional golf for a few years, and I really wasn't. I didn't know the first thing about real estate, and I followed her around for about a year. Ended up getting licensed very quickly, and looking back on it now, I'm coming into my 7th year of real estate. It's been an incredible journey. As far as a niche, I would say I kind of took the Nordstrom model. I don't know if you're familiar with Nordstrom, the retailer, but I worked there for a few years, and they're all about service. And I very quickly realized when I was mentoring that people are buying these, 6 and 7 figure properties, and I'm seeing a complete lack of service to the actual client. And a light bulb just kind of clicked. It was like, if I can actually solve these people's problem while giving them service and giving them my attention, that it's only a matter of time until that starts to pay itself back. And oddly enough, in my first year of real estate, I started receiving referrals year one. So I wouldn't necessarily say I have a niche. Last year, I sold a property for $46,000 and I sold a property for $2 million.
Oh, wow.
So I've developed my business solely off sphere of influence. This is going to be some of the first, marketing that I'm actually going to do. I found that my multi-list alone has over 7,000 agents. I don't live in a extremely populated area. I mean, Pittsburgh, PA, it's not small, but when you're talking about big cities, it's nothing. So I kind of took the stance. I want to attract people who want to work with me, and then if I get anybody else, it's just the bonus.
Nice. I'm feeling that philosophy so far. I love everything that you're going through right now. The fact that it seems like you already hit the ground running. You said you started getting referrals within your first year, which isn't too common. Like, a lot of people are just using their family and friends until they run dry, and then they eventually get referrals after like the third year or something like that. But you already start moving into that space. I like the headspace of wanting to work with people who want to work with you, not forcing the relationship, forcing the lead or the client or anything like that. Just make it as mutual as possible. That way we know we can get through this together and we both have that same goal. So I love that, and I got to respect that now that you said that, Jeff. So let's talk about where you're doing it. You said Pittsburgh already, so we know you're in
Sure.
that area. Let's talk about, describe it a little bit more. Describe it geographically. We already know Pittsburgh. Get into some more details. What is Pittsburgh known for? What are the attractions, things to do? Then get into some of the economics, real estate data-wise, price points, days on the market, etc.
So Pittsburgh, another tri-state area. We're known as the city of bridges. I personally am beyond thrilled that Pittsburgh's gotten a lot of attention since COVID. Is one of the most affordable cities, one of the most underrated cities. I can't tell you how many people were relocating from New York City, DC, some of the bigger metropolitan areas on the East Coast during COVID, and they'd come here and they'd be like, this is incredible. We have a tremendous restaurant scene. We have great culture in different parts of the city. A lot of the suburbs are rapidly just expanding. New development is still anywhere that there's land, there's new development. It has not stopped. It will not stop. Like
That's
most of the
good.
country, we don't have enough housing inventory. A question we always get is, aren't interest rates killing your business? And last I checked, housing's a need. You don't have the option to not have housing, and the interest rate, don't we all wish we could control it? Do I think I would do more business if we still had 3.5% interest rates? Absolutely, I do. But you know what? People don't want to talk about the dirty side to what happened there.
Ooh.
The housing price shot up exponentially,
Yep. Yep.
and sure, we're commission-based sales associates or people, however you want to describe it. But there were three houses specifically myself that I sold multiple times during COVID. Every single
Really?
time, yeah, every single time the seller was making money. They're paying, a percentage of commission, they're paying closing costs, and these properties just appreciated at such a rapid number. Um, I often, when I'm at my country club, people are like, I really want to upsize, but I got 3.5% interest rate. And it's like, yeah, well,
Mm-hmm.
you bought your house 3 years ago for 300,000. I could sell it for $550,000 tomorrow. Where are you going to make $250,000 in 3 years?
Correct.
So I think oftentimes, consumers, professionals alike, they get kind of narrow-minded and they fail to look at the whole big picture of the business that we're in.
Ooh wee, man! You starting off with some gas, Jeff. I love that. That's a good point that a lot of people don't necessarily touch on. I mean, it's the obvious if you look at it. COVID, yeah, the numbers as far as interest rate, the rates dropped, but the way it shot up, the price points for homes, is just crazy. So yeah, I can understand someone coming in, especially the flippers coming in real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Getting them in, turning them over really, really quick, and making that money on that appreciation. But it's so crazy because there's so many factors that went into where we are today and where the market is today, and you really hit on them with that. So great perspective, and thank you for touching on those points too, because it puts things within range. You share some things to consider when choosing a real estate agent. And I want to touch on this. You said reputation, experience, and communication style.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not seeing too many people highlight these three things specifically. So how should an individual gauge each one of these characteristics, and how do you show and prove each one of these characteristics to your clients?
Well, I feel, it's not going to be a one size fits all situation for everybody. I feel like I never forget that my job is a service. My potential client comes to me with a need, and then it's my job to figure out how can I best fulfill that need and get them where they're trying to go.
Gotcha.
Throughout that process, I find more often than not that I'm interviewing them more than they're interviewing me. I think I think a lot of consumers don't have the understanding or the time to actually care about the interview process.
Mm-hmm.
I would go as far as to say the majority of interviews that I go on with potential clients are usually listings, and typically all that person's going to try to negotiate or interview me on is my commission rate. And rightfully so, totally understand it.
All right.
I get it, but I I grew up playing golf. I have a horrible shoe addiction, and I've recently got into watches. And
Okay.
there's a saying, in all lines of work, that you get what you pay for.
Mm.
And I am not here to say that there aren't excellent agents that will work for a lower commission rate than others. And I'm also not saying that agents that charge a high commission rate are the best. But typically, when that negotiation gets down to, well, so and so is going to do it for this price. Well, that's fine. If that's what you're most comfortable with, that's who I
Yeah.
want you to go with.
Mm-hmm.
But typically, throughout that communication, most of those people kind of figure out, they're like, wait, he's asking questions that actually matter. He's starting to kind of change my mind about, whether it's just the commission or whatever variable this person might have. And you're never going to get all the business.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the most important lessons I learned, and it was probably my third year of real estate, is that not every deal is worth it. You know,
Ooh.
it's another dirty topic in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember the first time I fired a buyer. I had never felt more relieved in my life. I mean,
Wow.
it was like this weight off my shoulders. So, you got to keep in mind, my first year in real estate, I'm working a full-time job at Nordstrom. I'm slinging
Mm-hmm.
suits in a city where nobody wears suits, just trying to pay some bills. And, anybody that was like, hey, Jeff, we need to buy a house. It's like, I'm there. I don't care if you
All
look
right.
at 1,000 houses. Like, I need this paycheck. I need to develop my business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, but it takes you years to figure out. Some people are never going to buy a house. They're
Damn.
never going to commit. And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not anything you could do, I can do. Sometimes it's not even anything they can do. But
Mm.
it gets to the point where it's like, do I really want to spend more time, more money, and more energy on somebody that literally doesn't value any aspect of my time, knowledge, or
Mm.
experience?
Whew. Listen, Jeff, man, you made me laugh, you made me cry, but you hit on. First of all, what I like about what you said is the fact that not too many people are really interviewing the agent. They're not asking the important questions like the agent is asked. Well, if you are an agent who does their due diligence, yes, you're going to ask all the important questions to find out what are their goals, what do they want to really get out of this transaction. But in reverse, clients should be asking the agents this, like, just as many, if not more, questions. How long have you been, been licensed? How long have you been doing this? What are your toughest transactions? What are your easy? How can we make this easy for us? That type of thing. They don't ask that question too many times, and
Even,
I can't.
oh,
Well, go ahead, please,
sorry.
please.
I was going to say, even like, to me, having done this for, 7 years now,
Mm-hmm.
are you personally going to be working on my transaction? If I call
Ooh,
you,
ooh, yeah,
are you
yep.
going to answer the phone?
Mm-hmm.
How many other clients do you have right now?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
These are all things that, they matter. To me, I think as an industry, we need to do better at servicing our clients' needs. And I'm not saying you can't do 150 deals a year, because I know there are people that do it. I see it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The question is, are you giving great service to those 150 people?
Correct.
And,
Correct.
I don't fault the general public for not being aware of some of this stuff, but I think given this platform, I definitely think it's something that should be discussed and needs to be discussed.
No, absolutely, absolutely, and like I was saying, I think it was something I read that said most people just go with the first agent that they're referred to. Like if a friend or family member refers you to someone, more than likely you're probably going to trust that person and just just think that they're going to handle everything well because they may have handled your relatives or friends, but that's not always the case. Like you started off, it's not a one size fits all type of situation with that. So great point. I love that. You already talked about golfing. You're an advocate for golfing. Even a professional, like you said. It can be a great way to connect with potential clients, build those relationships, especially out on that golf course. But can you share how your passion for golf influenced your real estate business? And have you ever found memorable leads or made valuable connections on that golf course?
So golf has been a passion as long as I can remember. They got pictures of me. I could barely stand hitting golf balls, so that's been in my blood forever. But I met my mentor when I was playing around at golf, and just very organically in the first half hour, she was like, you got to come be a real estate agent. Like, I don't know what you're doing working at Nordstrom. So my journey into real estate started with golf, and I tried tracking down how many closings I've actually gotten from people I've met golfing, and I don't have that exact figure, but I'd bet you it's 25%, if not more, of my business. Golf has been used I'm going to use business forever. The thing I like about golf is, aside from my personal passion, when you go golfing, if we went golfing today, Kevin, we're going to spend 4 to 5 hours, within a foot of each other. And I'm going to get to see every aspect of your personality, because I don't know if you play golf, but you can ask the number one golfer in the world and the worst golfer in the world. They'll both tell you it is frustrating. So you get to see how people handle adversity. You get to see whether people follow the rules. And to me, you learn more about people in moments of stress. When everything's good, everybody's happy, there's nothing to complain about. But when things aren't going your way, are you going to pout, or are you going to, put the work in and just kind of keep your feet moving? So I think golf kind of provides a platform where you get to see people in a lot of different states of emotion, and you get to see how they handle them. But I've made some lifelong friends from playing golf. I've gotten plenty of business from playing golf. I think it is a platform that if you're in this industry and you have any interest in golf, I think you will make some great connections. Yeah. And I think it can only help your potential future business.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that you see a lot in media, movies, TV shows. A lot of people going out, the big business people going out to the golf course and really talking about business. And that's really actually what happens. I've been on the golf course a few times, not as often as I'd like. I actually stay across the street from one. But I get it, because me not being a professional, being an amateur at golf, I can definitely get frustrated. I can cheat a little bit, especially depending on who I'm with. So I get that. You take the opportunity to kind of see people, kind of gauge people, see their characteristics. I love the fact that you mentioned this, because I had this talk with my girlfriend not too long ago. Everything can be fine. Everyone can be their best when everything is great. Everyone can be perfectly fine. But when things start hitting turmoil, when things start getting rocky, that's when you find out the true character of that person. And golf, even though I wouldn't say that's like the worst situation you put someone through, you could still find out a lot about them, and I'm glad you put it that way, because I never thought of it like that. So, great insight.
It's something that we deal with all the time, I don't know if you could find one real estate professional in the world that could tell you that they didn't get to a point in a deal where everything went wrong and you just had to figure out a way to get to the closing table. Yep. And that's something that we all face on a fairly frequent basis.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, we're gonna get to some things you might have had to straighten out in your time in your career too. But from what I've seen, and you can help me clarify this, the Metro Pittsburgh area has some pretty decent top-rated schools, and I know school districts and schools have a big influence on families deciding where they usually want to stay. So can you talk about some of the top-rated school districts in that Metro Pittsburgh area and how it impacts the real estate market?
Sure. So I was actually looking at a couple different websites just because, with our licensing, we want to make sure we reference the website so that that information's coming from them, not from us.
Mm-hmm.
But I've noticed in my 7 years, it seems like the number one through number five shot spots kind of shuffle. Um, but currently, right now, according to niche.com, we have North Allegheny, Mount Lebanon, Upper St. Clair, Fox Chapel, and Hampton are the current top five in the metro Pittsburgh area.
Mm.
And it's no surprise to anybody in our industry that those areas see higher price points for comparisons to the immediately adjacent area. Um, During COVID, we had a very large influx of relocations coming into our area. And typically, those five school districts were at the top of their list. That's where they wanted to
Mm.
start, having never been here, knowing nothing about it. Let's face it, as human beings, we want the best for our family and certainly the best for our kids. So I can't fault anybody for starting with the top rated school districts.
Yeah, yeah. I have a quick question to that. As someone who also has a family, I obviously want to live in a place that has a great school district, just like what we talked about. Are you seeing clients who don't have families still want to be in that same type of area based off the fact that it could be considered a safe area, or are they just looking for anywhere? Please.
So that's a great question, and I personally have seen people that didn't have children that would focus on certain school districts. Um,
Mm.
I I don't always get to know everybody's true motives. There's certain times and certain questions in my business where it's not that I don't want to know, it's that legally I'm not allowed to ask certain questions, or, I'm not really going to dig into something that I'm not positive whether it's legal or not, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have one in particular who was looking, and she told me, she said, I just figure it's going to be the best for resale. Um, so, every individual is going to have their different motives, but there's no doubt that there could be several different motives as to why somebody would want to be in one of the quote nicest school districts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How 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 smart of your clients even think like that? Like, yeah, I don't have any kids now, but I'm pretty sure when I'm ready to sell this home, we could go to a family who wants to find a good school district. So
I,
that's very smart. I like that they thought like that. Go ahead, please.
I'd be the first to tell you, I've had a couple clients that have floored me, during our process.
Mm-hmm.
I had one woman in particular. Every house we would go see, she would ask me, why are they selling? Where are they going? She'd ask me every single question under the sun. And I told her the one day, it was, late evening, and I'd been showing houses all day. And I said, Rach, I've shown 22 houses today. I said, if there's any chance that I could even remotely research any of this stuff for all of those, I wouldn't have time to show houses.
Sure.
Well, wouldn't you know it, we end up going under contract on this house, and a couple days later, we're getting ready for the home inspection. We're having a call, and she's reading off to me the the sellers, what they did, who their kids were, where they worked, where they went, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't know. I it just shocked me. It was beyond shocking. This is also the same person who wanted to buy in a nice school district for resale value, but
Mm.
I am constantly learning from my clients, as I hope they are learning from me. And you just never know what you're going to encounter in this industry.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I would. I feel like it's not too irrational, right, for a client to want to know why the seller is selling. That's not
Sure.
too uncommon, right?
No,
But
not at all.
yeah, for them to really go in and do the research themselves, just let you know how valuable they found that information to be. But I mean, to each his own. Some people don't necessarily care about it. Some people, they do want to care and make sure it's, nothing faulty going on in regards to their sale. But nonetheless, as long as I think the fact that they are thinking ahead with the school district and thinking ahead with any other information just puts them in a great position in the long run. And you know, having an agent like yourself, when you are able to provide that type of information to help, you know, it takes them a long way. I want to get into problems that you may have had, because not all of the transactions are going to be perfect, right? Have you ever had a situation where you had to mediate some type of conflict, either between some nosy neighbors while you're doing a transaction on the home, or between buyer and seller? Please, and talk about how you solve that problem too.
Sure, it happens. It happens frequently.
Uh-oh.
One of the things that wasn't in the questionnaire that I thought might be is divorces. It's a large portion of the business, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but most divorces are typically messy situations from
Mm-hmm.
my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to go too far into that because your question highlighted, neighbor and buyer and seller. So as far as the neighbor, I've only had it happen once. I hear it happen, from agents in my office, friends. But there was one situation where I had a client that wanted to buy a house, and the house was not on the market yet, but we knew it was coming to market. And so my client was just out walking around, just kind of being nosy. And a neighbor approached her and told her all of these crazy things. There's flooding, there's mold, there's I don't remember all the specifics, but it was like I got a phone call like, I'm out. I'm not doing this. Like the house is, it's off my
Wow.
list. So I call who's going to be the listing agent and tell him that, and he's like, oh, so and so's at it again. He wants to buy the house, and they don't want to,
Oh.
and they don't want to give him a good deal on it, so they're gonna list it. And wouldn't you know it, my client ends up buying the house. During the inspection, this neighbor comes over and he's, berating my client, berating the inspector. Um, so things like that happen. I'll tell you another one with neighbors that was the first thing that popped in my mind when I was reading the question is in a lot of not a lot, but in some parts of Pittsburgh, um, specifically closer to the city, we have situations that arise where properties haven't transferred in a while, and the
Mm.
new buyer, the lender, requires a shared maintenance agreement for shared driveways. And I've had a couple of those situations where I had one where I couldn't get in contact with the neighbor. So, neighbor didn't appear like they were living there, find the tax records, find their contact info, reach out, can't find them. Luckily, by sheer coincidence, that owner's daughter was checking in on the property one day when I was there, and we were able to figure it out. But I
Mm.
feel like that shared maintenance agreement can become difficult because nobody wants to sign any paperwork that says they're responsible for something that up until this point they have had no responsibility for. So I
Mm-hmm.
find that to be a sticking point sometimes.
Yeah, especially if, I mean, just the fact that you have to share responsibility with someone else that you don't live with to maintain something is kind of crazy to me also, especially someone you don't know at all. Like it's that
Yep.
can become a little bit tricky and go into some muddy waters right there. So, but the neighbor thing though, ugh, disgusting. Like why? It's so unfortunate, but it's great to see that you still were able to close that deal with your specific client. But you have to deal with stuff like that. People just being nosy, people having their own agenda and just coming in the way of you just doing your job.
Hmm.
It's so unfortunate, but your professionalism obviously got you to close that deal. So I want to applaud you on that. So great job. Besides that, let's put that to the side. Looking throughout your career, what would you say overall would be one of the most challenging aspects of the real estate industry? And do you have any incidents that you've been through that kind of exemplifies this?
Yeah, so I'm kind of going to piggyback off a couple of things we've already talked about, but
Mm-hmm.
I went back and forth on this one a couple of times, but I'm going to land it. I'm going to stick with lack of accountability.
Ooh.
I think I think the lack of accountability within my profession and within even just our general society right now is a problem. You know, in a real estate transaction, there's anywhere from, on an extreme low end, 4 people involved to as many as, you know, a dozen people. And if any one of those people doesn't want to do their job in a timely manner, it affects everybody. But most importantly, you know, my personal frustrations aside, it affects my client. And not only does it affect my client, it affects the other client on the other side of the table. Um, you know, I had a deal earlier this summer where my buyer was purchasing a home in a area that had a homeowners association, and the head of the homeowners association just wasn't releasing the resale certificate. So after about a month, you know, maybe a week or two prior to closing, when I'm like, we still don't have this, what's going on? They're like, well, we applied for it, but they haven't sent it. And I said, okay, well, we need to get it, you know, like we can't just not get it. What are we going to do? Wait indefinitely until it appears? And it's funny, I drove over to the office, knocked on the door, explained the situation, and I left with the resale certificate. I mean, it's like it's not that complicated here, but you know,
Man.
it's kind of like one of those, you know, you need everybody to work together to get where you're trying to go. And, you know, I find more often than not, you know, when one agent doesn't necessarily want to do some aspect of their job, it's really not difficult for the other agent to do it, you know. And if they choose not to, you know, that's their choice. But the way I look at it is, if I have to spend an extra 10 minutes or 20 minutes doing something and I get a happy client out of it, that's an opportunity cost I'm more than willing to pay every time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, great way to think of it like that. Because it's already nasty. I don't even want to say nasty, but it's already challenging to the fact that a real estate transaction has so many moving parts. But then you add on the fact that it has moving parts where it really accounts for other people to do their job. So you have to wait for other people to do their job in some cases. And if they don't, you will have to pick up the slack. There's probably, besides a million other things, probably one of the unfortunate things about real estate. But, I mean, nonetheless, it's just part of the game. It's part of the game, unfortunately. So if you're going to play the game, you gotta be prepared for the good and the bad, unfortunately. This is the part where I want you to kind of think about what you've consumed and how it changed you. And I'm going to put this in the form of a question. What movie, book, quote, or philosophy can you share with us that helped change or shape your perspective personally or professionally?
So oddly enough, it's a book that I was given when I worked at Nordstrom and they were trying to get me into management. And it was called Leave It Better Than You Found It. I had very little interest in working up the ladder at Nordstrom. However, you know, reading the book, it really resonated with me, you know, going back to, you know, my time in school and topics like servant leadership. And to me, these topics always just kind of made sense. But when I read that question, it was like, you know, the light bulb went off, and it's such a perfect fit for my real estate business in that, you know, if I can't leave my clients in a better position than they came to me, I have provided no value to them. And I don't know how I could sit here on this podcast and say, you know, hey, come work with me. I'm going to help you. As we've talked about, lots of moving parts, lots of potential hurdles, but the essence of my business is a client has a need, I need to fulfill it, and I need to service it the best way possible. And I feel like every transaction, if I can't add that value to it and I can't leave them in a better position than I found them, then I have failed to do my job as a real estate professional.
Yeah. Yeah. Very honorable of you to look at it like that too. Because it's not just about the cash. And you stated that earlier. You made that point that it's not about the money. I mean, if you think it's about the money, then you're leaving out so many different important aspects of the deal. You know, even a seller accepting an offer it's not always about the cash then. Sometimes it's about other elements, you know, the contingencies, the occupancy, it's so on and so forth. So I'm not even gonna say sometimes. In these situations, it's best to leave the thought of the money out of it and go to the point of providing that value and providing that great service and things like that, because sometimes that could get overlooked. One last thing, did you have an author for that book by any chance? I probably look it up.
It's one of the Nordstrom family. I don't.
Okay.
You know,
No
honestly,
problem.
if I looked around enough, I could probably find it. But
Google is my friend.
It's a little messy.
Google is my friend. Don't worry about it. But thank you. Nonetheless, I love getting book recommendations for our guests, so we will be looking that up. But overall, thank you so much, Jeff, pulling up a chair to the closing table, sharing your knowledge. We definitely appreciate that. At this point in the episode, if you have any last words and or want to tell people how to reach out to you, the floor is yours.
I just really appreciate you inviting me, Kevin. It was a pleasure getting to talk to you. If anybody's interested in checking my stuff out, my website is jeffreyvarga.com. And my Instagram handle is just ask Jeff Remax Select.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Appreciate that. Thank you again, Jeff. And for our YouTube audience watching right now, if you got to this point in the video, do us both a favor and hit the like button, please. And thank you. Make sure you also subscribe and share the content. Please do that. And if you're listening on Apple, Spotify, any other podcast platforms, please do the same. Give us a like, a 5-star rating, and subscribe for our latest content. Jeff, the one thing I like to do before we end the episode is leave our audience with a question. So this is for you, audience. Do you prefer to stay close to a school? And what factors do you consider when evaluating how good a school or school district is? Don't tell us now. Leave it in the comments below. Besides that, we'll talk to you next time.